The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is one of the most iconic kids shows to have ever been created. It brought forth some of the best romance, storylines, and characters that many fans, young and old, can identify with. But while they were successful for many things, there was always one failure that Power Rangers Zeo made happen: the romance between Kat Hillard and Tommy Oliver. Now, this isn't to bash on Kat Hillard as a character or her actress, Catherine Sutherland. I had the pleasure of meeting Catherine Sutherland on 3 separate occasions through Instagram Live, and I can attest that she is one of the classiest, kindest, most beautiful celebrities I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. She's just wonderful, plain and simple. Her character, Kat Hillard, is extremely close to my heart. All the original Rangers and the ones that took up the mantle from them are, but I personally feel that the romance between Tommy and Kat was one of the worst things Power Rangers Zeo ever did, next to Billy Cranston just simply being disrespected due to David Yost having personal issues with the writing staff, directors, and crew. But that's a whole other story. This is about the poor startup to the Tommy Oliver and Kat Hillard romance. And in this video, I'm going to explain why I think that is. I also feel I need to say that it's okay if you disagree with me. Maybe you love Tommy with Kat, and that's okay. But I'm just saying, to my taste, they were just never on the same scale as Tommy and Kimberly, which was the very first romance the show ever did. Now with that out of the way, let's dive into the video. First, before I explain why I feel Kat and Tommy weren't the best couple on the show, we need to go over some history. We need to talk about the romance between Tommy and Kimberly, which is arguably iconic and is one of the first things that comes to people's minds when they think of the show. Kimberly was the first girl whom Tommy truly interacted with when he was introduced on the show, and the romantic tension and chemistry between the pair was no mystery to anyone. It was clear from day one of them meeting that they were going to be together. No question. They were the very first on-screen kiss that the show ever featured, and this was long before dumb TV censorships came in, claiming that 2 teens, a boy and a girl, kissing on screen was somehow inappropriate for young children to view, but I digress. Tommy and Kimberly's relationship was a constant for 3 seasons. It was there in the Mighty Morphin movie. They were shown to have a relationship and a bond that just cannot simply go away. But then, there came the time for Kimberly to leave the show. Obviously, she needed someone to pass the mantle of the Pink Ranger too, and when we're introduced to the blonde ballerina from Australia, Kat Hillard, we meet a young woman who is being used by Rita Repulsa to take Kimberly out of commission. After Kat comes to her senses, she becomes a friend to Kimberly, and naturally, Kimberly trusts her with the mantle of the Pink Ranger, and Kat proved to be a very natural fit to the show. She had a great chemistry with Karen Ashley's Aisha Campbell, and she and Tommy both bonded over the fact that at one point, they were used by Rita. And when Tanya Sloan came into the picture, she suddenly had a girl on the team that she could call her best friend. She was very warm, very caring, and was also fearless, tough, and she could hold her own in a fight. However, there came a point in Zeo where the writers decided that Kat needed a romance, and naturally, they felt she belonged with Tommy. Now, I personally don't have an issue with Kat being with Tommy. That wasn't the problem. The overall issue with it was how they got together, which was extremely disrespectful to not just Tommy and Kat, but Kimberly as well. The writers of the show decided that in order to clear the room for Kat and Tommy's romance to take center stage, Kimberly would send Tommy a Dear John letter. But here's the problem with that. Kimberly Hart would never in a million years do something like this. She is far too kind, far too sensitive, far too caring for Tommy's feelings to ever do something as callous as to send him a Dear John letter. And we later find out from deleted scenes from the Power Rangers Turbo movie that this new guy she suddenly fell for was Jason Lee Scott, portrayed by Austin St. John, but we'll get to that later, and just why that's so awful and why the writers were making such a huge mistake trying to push it. Anyway, after Tommy receives this Dear John letter from Kimberly, Kat and Billy decide in order to cheer him up, they'll take him snowboarding. And before you know it, at the end of that two-parter episode, Tommy and Kat are sharing a special dance and they almost kiss. Tommy would never get over Kimberly that quickly, that easily, in 2 episodes. It's completely unrealistic and it's just plain disrespectful to all 3 characters in this party. Kat looks like she's throwing herself onto a guy who just got over a breakup, which is just so awful. Tommy later on is acting as though he had nothing with Kimberly and that it meant nothing to him, and Kimberly is being painted as extremely cold-hearted and uncaring. And it's just terrible for all fans who love these 3 characters, much like I do. And to make matters even worse, salt is rubbed into the wound for a lot of fans when the Turbo movie comes out in 1997. Tommy and Kat, by this point, are a couple. However you may feel about that is up to you. But then, Jason and Kimberly are brought into the main plot when they are kidnapped by the main villain and they are brainwashed to turn against their friends. And according to the director and the writers of this film, there were deleted scenes suggesting that Jason was the guy whom Kimberly cheated on Tommy with. And let me tell you why that's such a huge problem. The fan base for Power Rangers is already divided enough on who loves Jason David Frank and who prefers Austin St. John. The episode that marked Tommy and Jason's feud, so to speak, is On Fins and Needles, Season 1, Episode 56. And ever since then, there's been rumors that Jason David Frank and Austin St. John just don't get along and that they hate each other. And the polarizing fan base of who preferred Tommy and who preferred Jason definitely did not help. Then, the icing on the cake was the Turbo movie. The announcement that Jason was the guy Kimberly cheated on Tommy with only radicalized the 2 extremes. The fact that the writers decided to further add to the pettiness between Jason David Frank and Austin St. John through a love triangle turned into a love square was just atrocious. And then you wonder why JDF and ASJ fans constantly ask, where's the beef? It's like they want to see these 2 grown men who are husbands and fathers at this point in their lives go at it, and it's completely ridiculous. And to add insult to injury, in the Turbo movie, from Tommy and Kimberly's interactions, you'd think they were never together, that the romance between them meant absolutely nothing. The fact that the Turbo movie completely erases the history of Tommy and Kimberly's relationship and essentially replaces it with the Kat and Tommy relationship is one of the worst things about that film. The retconning is just plain and simple an insult to a lot of core fans. Not to mention, Tommy and Kat appeared during a Rangers special as a married couple nearly 20 years later, but the worst part about this is their marriage is hardly mentioned there at all. The love between them as a married couple is barely existent, and this all stems from the writers' horrible decision to break Tommy and Kimberly up in the form of a Dear John letter. That Dear John letter caused this downward spiral, and it made a lot of things just go from bad to worse. Tommy and Kat are not an awful couple. It's clear Jason David Frank and Catherine Sutherland had a good chemistry in the later seasons, and to this day they're best friends. But the way the relationship started, to me, is sacrilege. Had the writers just left Tommy and Kimberly alone and gave Kat her own romance with one of the other male characters, maybe Jason or Billy, just saying, then we wouldn't have gotten this, and quite frankly, Kat deserved that. Catherine Sutherland especially deserved that. But I don't want to end this video on a negative note. I'm going to try and leave things on a positive note. It's clear to me that the writers of Power Rangers learned from their mistake, and they got significantly better at writing romance, or at least romantic tension. Look at Ravi Shaw and Roxy, who were shown to have an extremely deep, loving connection from the start of Power Rangers Beast Morphers, and her first word she ever uttered from waking from her coma was Ravi. Another example, Nate Silva and Zoe Reeves from Beast Morphers, or perhaps Dana Mitchell and Carter Grayson from Lightspeed Rescue, who many still ship to this day. Or how about Jen Scotts and Wesley Collins from Power Rangers Time Force? It goes to show that the writers realized we do not want love triangles or characters breaking up with one another in petty ways that make one character look awful and another look like the good guy. We want well-developed, well-written romances and good chemistry between characters. That's what we desire to watch every single week on the show. And I'm so happy they're no longer following the formula of how Kat and Tommy started. And I'm happy that over the years, people warmed up to Kat's character, as well as Catherine Sutherland, and that she's gained her own fan base, something that I personally feel she truly deserves. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you happen to be brand new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also be sure to follow all my social media links, which will be linked down below in the description box. God bless, happy viewing, and have a nice day.